Let us for a few moments meditate on Sri Ramakrishna and pray for the welfare of the whole humanity. Shanti Shanti Hari Om Tat Sat. Om Stavakaya Chadharmasya Sarvadharma Swarupine Stavakaya Chadharmasya Sarvadharma Swarupine Avatar Varishtaya Ramakrishna Yate Namah. Asato ma sadgamaya tamaso ma jyotirgamaya mrityorma mritangamaya. Om Shanti Shanti Shanti. Let us bow down to Sri Ramakrishna, the embodiment of all religions, the Supreme God incarnate. Let us pray to Him to lead us from unreal to the real, to lead us from darkness of ignorance to the light of knowledge, to lead us from death to immortality. We have been discussing in the last two classes about the conquering of ego. Sri Ramakrishna in one of his teachings said, who is called a devotee? He is called a devotee whose mind dwells on God. But this is not possible as long as one has egotism and vanity. The water of God's grace cannot collect on the high mound of egotism. It runs down. So he said to Keshav Chandra Sen, give up the ego. So that was our subject. How to get rid of this ego which is causing all problems and sufferings. We have stated 4 methods of dealing this ego. One is peeling method, second is dilatation method, third is alchemic method, and the last one, not I but thou. So these are the 4 methods. We had studied about peeling, dilatation and alchemic. Just as you peel off the onion, as Sri Ramakrishna used to say, go on peeling off, finally you see nothing inside. In the same way, if you go on discriminating by following the method of not this, not this, when you are trying to disidentify yourself from all body, mind and so on, when you go deep into the layers of mind, if you are strong and determined, then if you pursue the matter further, you feel, you find ego completely vanishing. At that point, God shines in all its glory. The second method is dilatation method. This little ego is giving limitation. You are limited to do things. You are being constrained, as it were. But this method tells you to expand your ego, expand so much to encompass the whole universe. That is dilatation method. And once you expand yourself to that extent, you become infinite, you become limitless. You cross the boundary of ego. Then the third method, which we discussed in the last class, alchemic method. This method is also very useful in dealing with egoism. See, alchemic method is well known in olden days to transmute baser metals into gold. The same method is adopted here. Our ego at present is debased. It is diseased and bondage producing. There's a way of transforming this into good, healthy and bondage breaking ego. That's the alchemic method. And Sri Ramakrishna tells in a very charming way how to deal with this ego. The ego which is nurtured by worldly circumstances, and worldly pursuits is called by Sri Ramakrishna as the unripe ego. It's also called wicked ego. Why it is wicked? Because it doesn't allow you to go towards God. It doesn't want God, to tell you frankly. A person who is egoistic doesn't want God. Where is God? Hiranyakashipu was telling like that. There's a great story in the Bhagavad. Hiranyakashipu was a gigantic person who had enormous powers, and he became so powerful he could not keep quiet without doing some kind of war or something with somebody. He wanted to conquer the whole universe in a way. He even fought with the gods. He made even gods to obey him. So his ego reached the maximum pitch, we should say. And when Prahlad, his son, was devoted to Lord Vishnu, he became very angry. He called him and said, "What are you talking about? Who is that God you are talking? I have conquered all the gods in this universe." If you want to call they should be God, I am the God. He began to talk in that fashion. His ego became so wicked. He didn't want anybody else other than himself to enjoy the glory. Anyway, that was the climax. So, Sri Ramakrishna is telling that in order to tame this ego, the easy method is make the ego, servant ego, think you are the servant, God as a master, or as a child ego, think you are as a child, God as a mother or father. That attitude is very good. So, if a person thinks himself as a devotee of God, then he has the ego of devotion. Such an ego was called by Sri Ramakrishna as a ripe ego. This ripe ego is very useful. Finally, it takes you towards God. So, this is the alchemic method. The baseness of the ego is very smoothly transmuted into a sublime spiritual affinity. To the devotees who questioned if the servant I or the child ego were harmful, Sri Ramakrishna replied that they were egos in semblance only. This ripe ego is not harmful. That's what Sri Ramakrishna meant. They were utterly harmless, like the burnt string which can't be used for binding, or the sword that has touched the philosopher's stone, though the gold sword has the shape, it cannot injure anyone. If the unripe ego divided the waters of Satchidananda like a bamboo stick, the ripe ego was like a line drawn on water with it. Swami Brahmananda ji, one of the direct disciples of Sri Ramakrishna, a very great spiritual person, he said, man suffers. Why? Why does he suffer? Because of his ignorance. What is this ignorance? It is his sense of ego. All the holy people have told, have diagnosed, have found out the culprit who was responsible for all suffering in this world. We have to deal with that culprit. That's the way to get rid of suffering. So what should be done? How to feel you are to be freed from ego, how to feel that attitude? And Brahmanji suggests, surrender your life, surrender your mind, surrender your intellect, everything at the blessed feet of the Lord of all. That means what he is telling is renounce everything that you call your own. Then you are blessed indeed. Then alone you will be truly happy. So, the sense of doership or agency that characterizes the ego. Anyone, after a little reflection, can discover how little is accomplished by self-effort. Though most of us have an obsession about our own indispensability in the affairs of the world, it would sober us down to think that the world existed before our birth, and it will continue to exist as well after we leave it. But the ego, hollow in itself, will never allow us to know our insignificance. Sri Ramana Maharshi, a very great saint, he compared the ego to the image carved on a tower, making a pretense by its strained look and posture that it is supporting the tower on its shoulder. And he added, the ego cannot exist without the higher power, but thinks it acts of its own accord. Most of us can recognize ourselves in the carved figure on the tower with strained look and posture. In Mahabharata, you see how Arjuna fought in the battlefield in Kurukshetra. He was fighting valiantly. He was laboring under the delusion that he was responsible for killing the enemy forces and he was responsible for winning the war. Lord Krishna, because he was the best friend of Arjuna, Arjuna had chosen him as a friend. He has chosen God himself as his friend. So he was saved from all troubles. Without Lord Krishna, they would not have won the war. Shri Krishna knew the inner workings of Arjuna's mind. He wanted to show him the reality, to give the glimpse of reality, what reality is, who is actually killing. So, what he did was, he showed his Vishwarup, his cosmic form. Arjuna was overwhelmed to see that. In that form, what did he see? He saw that the outstanding heroes and soldiers, they were all rushing to their gory end. In the awesome jaws of the Lord, everyone was meeting with death. It was hardly necessary for Sri Krishna to tell him, all these have been killed by me already, be thou an instrument only, O Arjuna. Maivaite nigataha purvameva nimitta matram bhavasavya. Everything is done by me. Just be like an instrument. You will be saved from all dangers. By seeing this cosmic form of Lord Krishna, Arjun's ego was completely crushed. All of us, more so the spiritual seekers, we are all out on the world's battlefield. Whether we want inner or outer victories, we are in the predicament of Arjun. If we humble ourselves and take refuge in the Lord, we will win the battle. God will win the battles for us, as He did for Arjun. He takes the responsibility. We don't have to bother unnecessarily. Our struggles are limited to cultivating the spirit of not I, but Thou, O Lord. So that is the fourth method which I am trying to discuss today. Not I, but Thou. This is another method of conquering the terrible ego. The grand symphony of the Gita's teaching culminates on the note of self-surrender. Lord Krishna says in the 18th chapter, Sarvadharman parityajya mamekam sharanam vraja aham tva sarvapapebhyo mokshayishyami ma shuchaha. He assures, he tells, relinquish all dharmas. Don't bother about them anymore. Just take refuge in me. I shall deliver you from all sins. Don't grieve. That's the message Lord Krishna has given. By that way He is suggesting us, get rid of your ego. Keep your ego at my feet. Then you will see the wonder of wonders. Sri Ramakrishna says, you may try thousands of times, but nothing can be achieved without God's grace. One cannot see God without His grace. Then Sri Ramakrishna tells further, well, is it an easy thing to receive grace of God? Is it an easy thing to receive the grace of God? Then Sri Ramakrishna tells, one must altogether renounce egotism. One cannot see God as long as one feels, I am the doer. As long as one feels, I am very important. I am hurt. I. Worry, anxiety, neurosis and mental tension cause more misery and mortality than cancer epidemics and war. Modern science and modern technology have generated an illusion that man is the master of the world scene. Not only has this pampered man's ego, but has made it deliriously ill. This delirious ego causes neurosis and tensions. If modern man is to recover sanity and cultivate serenity, he must learn to subdue the ego, cut it to size, and surrender to God, its true master. That's the way to conquer the ego. Everybody thinks he is infallible. Deluded by egoism, man regards himself as very important. He doesn't even want to believe in the existence of God. He never seriously considers how little he can understand with his intellect. They often take the example of Narada Maharshi, a very great saint. He attained devotion and knowledge of Brahman. How did he get them? Just by serving holy men. Ego is destroyed through service. That is the most wonderful result you get through service. How difficult it is to do service. That you must know. Not doing in a haphazard way. Service must be done with utmost attention and care. Utmost attention is required. Then only the result is assured. What is the result? The ego will be uprooted. That's the result. But the method, service, must be done with utmost attention. Under no circumstances give up your spiritual practices. Never say any reason. Never, never. All the Mahatmas warn about that. If you give up the practices of japa and meditation and engage yourself solely in work, do you know what will happen? Egoism is bound to arise in you. Then what will happen? You will become the source of quarrels. You will become the source of disharmony. Swami Chidananda ji, another disciple of Sri Ramakrishna, said, know it for certain that if one goes on performing one's duties under the sincere belief that one is doing God's work, that attitude is very important. One can never suffer spiritually. And Shivananda tells further, God protects such a one forever. But the fall comes as soon as egoism and attachment creep in. I am just taking the teachings of direct disciples, how they are very useful for us in this topic of conquering the ego. Swami Premananda, another disciple, he said, do you know how Sri Ramakrishna trained us? He made us nobodies. Then Premananda says, you also have to become nobodies. Wipe out all vanity and all sense of ego. Wipe out. Sri Ramakrishna used to say, when the ego dies, all troubles cease. Not I, but thou, O Lord. Probably you know a great disciple, a great devotee, his name Nag Mahasaya. If you have not read his life, please read his life. It is so inspiring. What do you find in him? Personification of humility. There was not the least trace of ego in him. Girish Chandra Ghosh, a household devotee of Sri Ramakrishna, who was saved by Sri Ramakrishna in a way. He said, very nicely he has made observations about Nag Mahashya and Vivekananda. Referring to Nag Mahashya, the great devotee of Sri Ramakrishna, Girish Chandra Ghosh said, Maya, she tried to bind Nag Mahashya and Vivekananda in her net, but she could not succeed. Why? Nag Mahashaya became smaller than the smallest, so that Maya's net could not hold him. What about Vivekananda? He grew bigger and bigger. He became so big, so vast. He became one with the infinite, and the net was too small to bind him. So both were escaped from the Maya's net. Pray to God that you may only be the instrument in the hands of the Lord through His grace. You are all working in various ways, expressing your devotion to God. But always feel your devotion becomes real when you feel you are an instrument in the hands of God. If you have this attitude that you are the instrument of God, then what is the result? You will become a real karma yogi. Real karma yogi. Not the fake one. Not the pretense. One may be working 14 hours or 20 hours, maybe 32 hours. Simply because he is working, you can't call him a karma yogi. You become karma yogi only when you consider yourself as an instrument of God. That's the point. Swami Turiyanandaji, another direct disciple, said, whatever is good is His, means Lord's. Whatever is bad is the result of our bad karma. If we continue this attitude, we may eventually get rid of the ego. Swami Adbhutanandaji, another disciple, said, a man will get social merit through his philanthropic activities. But if his ego is involved in those activities, he will not get any spiritual merit. Even the result of a good action turns into a bondage if it is done with the ego. Another disciple, Swami Ramakrishna Math, he said, when you live constantly in the presence of divinity, what will happen? The ego loses its power. But so long as the ego rules a man, he is a bond slave. All your anxieties and worries come from where? They come from egotism, they come from selfishness. Let go your little self and they will disappear. Another important point, very nicely has been said. Swami Ramakrishna has said, all Maya is localized in ego. Pull out the foundation and the whole house will collapse. Take away the ego and the whole structure of Maya will fall. Then you will realize a state of perfect calmness. Well, what we see by observing the people and things in this world, it seems to you easier to love the world than to love God. That is because the ego binds our sight so that we cannot perceive the beauty of God. This ego must be conquered. It's always a falsifier. It places itself on the throne which belongs to God and tries to hide God. So long as the ego is on the throne, we can never hope to see or love God. Hatred and anger are the signs of ego. If a man hates anyone or gets angry with anyone, you may be sure he has not conquered his ego and cannot feel true love in his heart. Then Ramakrishna Math says, what is the ego? A mere soap bubble. Soap bubble. One blow will break it and reveal its hollowness. We must get rid of ego and reach the state where we can say sincerely, not I, but thou. When you have been able to put down the ego, then what is the result? Love of God will come of itself. That's very important. Once you taste that love of God, then you will be moving faster in your spiritual journey. It makes it easy to you to reach God. So these are the methods by which we should tackle our ego. We are all ruled by ego. Ego has occupied the throne where God should sit. We should understand this fact. Try to practice honestly, sincerely. That's the way we should go. That's what Sri Ramakrishna wanted us, to be free from ego. With these words, I conclude my talk. Then I will read a passage, then I have questions and answers. Page 550. About 5 o'clock that afternoon, Sri Ramakrishna was on his way to Calcutta. M. Mahendra Mukherjee and a few other devotees accompanied him in Mahendra's carriage. Thinking of God, the master soon went into an ecstatic mood. After a long time, he regained consciousness of the world. He observed, that fellow Hazra dares teach me, the rascal. After a short pause, he said, I shall drink some water. He often made such remarks in order to bring his mind down to the sense plane. Mahendra asked M, may I get some refreshments for him? M said, no, he won't eat anything now. Master, still in an ecstatic mood, said, I shall eat. Mahendra took the master to his flour mill located at Hathi Bagan. After a little rest, Sri Ramakrishna was to go to the theatre. Mahendra didn't care to take him to his own house, for the master was not well acquainted with his father, Priyanath. Mahendra's second brother was also a devotee, of the Master. Sri Ramakrishna was sitting on a cot over which a carpet had been spread and was engaged in spiritual talk. Master said to him and the others, once, while listening to the various incidents of the life of Chaitanya, Hazrat said that these were manifestations of Shakti and that Brahman, the all-pervasive spirit, had nothing to do with them. But can there be Shakti without Brahman? Hazrat wants to nullify the teachings of this place, referring to himself. I have realized that Brahman and Shakti are identical like water and its wetness, like fire and its power to burn. Brahman dwells in all beings as the Vibhu, the all-pervasive consciousness, though its manifestation is greater in some places than in others. Hazrat says further that anyone who realizes God must also acquire God's supernatural powers, that he possesses these powers, though he may or may not use them. Yam said, yes, one must have control over these supernatural powers. All laugh. Master said smilingly, yes, one must have them in one's grasp. How mean! He who has never enjoyed power and riches becomes impatient for them, but a true devotee never prays to God for them. Sri Ramakrishna washed his face. A smoke was prepared for him. He said to him, is it dusk now? If it is, I won't smoke. During the twilight hour of the dusk, he should give up all other activities and remember God. Saying this, he looked at the hairs on his arm. He wanted to see whether he could count them. If he could not, it would be dusk. About 8:30 in the evening, the carriage with the Master and the devotees drew up in front of the Star Theatre at Baden Street. He was accompanied by M. Baburam, Mahendra and 2 or 3 others. They were talking about engaging seats when Girish Chandra Ghosh, the manager of the theatre, accompanied by several officials, came out to the carriage, greeted the Master and took him and the party upstairs. Girish had heard of the Master and was very glad to see him at the theatre. The Master was conducted to one of the boxes. M sat next to him. Babu Ram and 1 or 2 devotees sat behind. The hall was brilliantly lighted. The Master looked down at the pit and saw that it was crowded. The boxes also were full. For every box there was a man to fan those who occupied it. Sri Ramakrishna was filled with joy and said to M with his childlike smile, oh, it is very nice here. I am glad to have come. I feel inspired when I see so many people together. Then I clearly perceive that God Himself has become everything. Yam said, it is true, sir. Master said, how much will they charge us here? Yam said, they won't take anything. They are very happy that you have come to the theatre. Master said, it's all due to the grace of the Divine Mother. The Chaitanya Leela was about to be performed. It was a play about the early life of Sri Chaitanya, who was also known as Nimai, Gaur, Gora and Gauranga. The curtain rose, the attention of the audience was fixed on the stage. We shall stop here. Your session begins now. Who has commented like that? No, who has commented that way? That Lord's, does he talk about love there in symbols, icons? Then it is not dealing with that subject at all. See, cold, ice, snow, they are all parts of nature. And Shiva is the Lord of the universe. Creator, sustainer and destroyer. All the three in one. So Shiva is all loving and all compassionate. That's why he drank the poison to save the humanity from being dead. He brought life to the humanity by drinking the poison himself. But his abode is Kailas, just as people are living in the West. Do you mean to say that people in the West have no love at all? Because they are in the cold country? See, love, manifestation of love is only through activities. Through activities you can know how love is to be experienced. What is love after all? That which gives you peace of mind, that which removes your suffering, which makes you calm and peaceful, that feeling, that's called love. It's a kind of feeling. So, if you get the vision of Lord Shiva, you must have that feeling. And God is the symbol of love. Parama Prema Rupa, that is the sutra in Narada Bhakti Sutra. God is described as Parama Prema Rupa. He is the embodiment of love, highest form of love. So Shiva, Vishnu, they are all different names of the same God. When you say He is God, that means He is compassionate, He is all loving. That means when you are in distress, when you are feeling helpless, you can definitely pray to God and feel the joy of love, how God extends His love. See, the devotees, they explain according to their way of approach and worship. That's one way. The worshippers of Radha Krishna, they tell how to experience love, you have to go this way. But worshippers of Shiva tell you, you have to go this way to experience love. There is no conflict as such. But the path is clear, that's all. If you have to go in that path, you follow that method. If you are going this path, follow this method. That's what Sri Ramakrishna said. There are so many paths, take whatever path you want. Once you have chosen the path, go ahead. Don't divert your attention here and there. Like that. So, after all, I explained to you in this today's class, how do you experience the love of God? That experience will come only when you are free from ego. The ego, which makes you miserable all the time. I am the doer, I have to go to job. If I don't earn money, do you think God will come and feed my family? Like you may ask the question. I have to go, I have to work. So, if a man thinks like that, that means he is too important for him. He is more important for him than God Himself. If you have that tendency, you can't experience love at all. Even if you worship Lord Krishna, you won't get that love. Whomsoever God you may worship, you will not get that experience unless you get rid of ego. That's the point. Anything else? That's the point which we have touched upon. See, the feeling that I am the agent, etc., that is causing you tension, worry. But if you say that I am the servant of God, keep that I as a servant I am doing Master's work, everything is God's work, that if you give that orientation, spiritual orientation to your impulses and things, then they get purified. Then you won't feel the pinch of the ego, and you won't feel the bad reaction of the ego. The bad reaction is hatred, anger, and so on. All those bad effects you will not have. If you feel you are the servant of God, you will never take the false step, and you will be always cheerful and calm, carrying on the duties, that's all. Duty for duty's sake. That's the way to sublimate the ego. Sublimating the ego, that's important. That's the way to conquer. Otherwise, one becomes egoistic, means one becomes proud and boastful, and consequently he can do many things, many wrong things he can do just to satisfy his greed. Yeah. So as long as selfishness is there, the ego is very aggressive. Become more and more selfless, then you are transforming your aggressive ego into submissive, sublime ego. That's what Sri Ramakrishna said, a ripe ego. Everybody will have ego, no doubt. Nobody is free from ego. But then let the ego remain like a ripe ego. As I am the child of God, then carry on the work. That's the way what Sri Ramakrishna has said. Yeah. But that has been discussed in that first method, peeling off method. So when you disidentify the ego from the external things, when you keep on disidentifying it, then you find finally the ego vanishes. Just like peeling off the onion. That's why all the demons used to propitiate Lord Shiva. Now what is that to do with? Now what is that to do with the ice? He loved to stay in the white-clad mountain. See, everything has got its beauty. Just as the spring, rainy season, winter, cold, hot. See, that's the game. All you have to consider the whole thing in one unit, not part by part. All adds to the beauty. Yeah. Though he lives in the ice, he is not affected by the coldness of the ice. Actually, he doesn't wear any cloth at all. He just wears a tiger skin. No, even the Radha Krishna also, it's not sensual love. No. What you see, too, Sri Ramakrishna also has said, and Swami Vivekananda has said, to understand Radha Krishna, you must be purified enough. Mind should rise to your level of purity must be very high to understand the episode of Radha and Krishna. Personal praise one can do, because Lord Krishna himself tells in the Gita, Artho jigyansa arthate jnanicha bharatashabha chatuvida bhajante mam. So 4 types of devotees worship me. They are all devotees. Lord Krishna says, one is artha, one who wants things this way, that way, like that. He prays. He appeals to God to save from this problem, etc., etc. No harm at all. No harm. At least in order to have his desire fulfilled, he prays to God. Under that pretext, at least he has come to God. Then slowly he will understand the glory of God. When God shows his grace and compassion, then he will devote more time to God and try to develop dispassion in himself. Slowly. Just the idea. Shall stop. Chant the name of the Lord and His glory unceasingly, that the mirror of the heart may be wiped clean, and quenched that mighty forest fire, worldly lust, raging furiously within. Our name streamed down in moonlight on the lotus heart, opening its cup to knowledge of thyself. O self, drowned deep in the waves of His bliss, tasting His nectar at every step, bathing in His name, that bath for weary souls. Various are thy names, O Lord, in each and every name thy power resides. No times are set, no rites are needful for chanting of thy name. So vast is thy mercy, how huge then is my wretchedness, who find in this empty life and heart no devotion to thy name. O my mind, be humbler than a blade of grass. Be patient and forbearing like a tree. Take no honor to thyself, give honor to all. Chant unceasingly the name of the Lord. O Lord and soul of the universe, mine is no prayer for wealth or retinue, the playthings of lust or the ties of fame. As many times as I may be reborn, grant me, O Lord, a steadfast love for Thee. A drowning man in this world's fearful ocean is Thy servant, O sweet one. In Thy mercy consider him as dust beneath Thy feet. Oh, how I long for the day when an instant separation from Thee, O Lord, will be as 1,000 years, when my heart burns away with its desire, and the world without Thee is a heartless void. Prostrate at Thy feet let me be in unwavering devotion, neither imploring the embrace of Thine arms, nor bewailing the withdrawal of Thy presence, though it tears my soul asunder. O Thou who stillest the hearts of Thy devotees, do with me what Thou wilt, for Thou art my heart's beloved, Thou and Thou alone. O Lord, lead us from the unreal to the real, lead us from darkness to light, and lead us from death to immortality. May all be free from dangers, may all realize what is good, may all be actuated by noble thoughts, may all rejoice everywhere. May all be happy, may all be free from disease, may all realize what is good, may none be subject to misery. May the wicked become virtuous, may the virtuous attain tranquility, may the tranquil be free from bonds, may the freed make others free. May good betide all people, may the sovereign righteously rule the earth, may all beings ever attain what is good, may the worlds be prosperous and happy. May the clouds pour rain in time, may the earth be blessed with crops, may all countries be freed from calamity, may holy men live without fear. May the Lord, the destroyer of the sins, the presiding deity of all sacred works be satisfied, for He being pleased, the whole universe becomes pleased. He being satisfied, the whole universe feels satisfied.